Get out of our lives and keep that old ranch. That was all it took. 7 words. Spat out like venom, not even a full week after Mildred buried the man she had spent 42 years loving. They said it in front of the lawyer. In front of the will. In front of the ghost of the life she thought she had built. And just like that, she wasn't a mother-in-law anymore. She was a burden. Mildred Lancaster had never been the kind of woman who demanded attention. She had grown up on farms, in the dusty quiet of Montana's hills, where silence was both shelter and strength. She met Gerald Lancaster when she was 25, a mechanic's daughter who had come to town to deliver fresh eggs. He was tall, patient, spoke in slow sentences, a Vietnam vet with kind eyes and scars he never talked about. He had inherited the Lancaster Ranch from his grandfather, a rundown piece of land just outside Copper Ridge, known mostly for stubborn cows and stubborn men. They built a life, simple and quiet. They raised one child, Nathan, who Mildred poured every drop of herself into. She wasn't one for loud scoldings or high expectations. Just warmth, steady hands, and apple pie on cold Sundays. But maybe she was too quiet. Maybe that's why Nathan married Carla, a woman who never once looked Mildred in the eyes. A woman who always seemed to be talking, especially when it was about money. The room was colder than the October wind outside. Gerald had died peacefully, but the weight in Mildred's chest was anything but peaceful. She sat in the lawyer's office, wearing the navy blue coat Gerald bought her 18 years ago. She hadn't changed a thing about herself in days. Still the same bun, the same soft face, the same scent of lavender and grief. Nathan sat across from her, fidgeting. Carla sat with her arms folded, her lip gloss too bright for a day like this. The lawyer began reading the will. Gerald had left Nathan the machinery business in town. A savings account with a modest sum. The truck. But the ranch, the old Lancaster ranch, with its crumbling barn, fading fences, and lonely memories, that was left to Mildred. Not shared. Not for sale. Not up for debate. Carla was the first to speak. Seriously? That dump? Carla, Nathan whispered, trying to hush her. No, let's be honest. Why should we keep paying taxes and maintenance on a piece of land that isn't worth crap? Let her take it. Let her live there and rot. Mildred didn't say a word. Then Carla leaned forward, her voice sharp as knives. Get out of our lives and keep that old ranch. And just like that, the silence in the room became louder than any scream. She didn't cry that night. She made tea. She folded clothes. She stared at the wedding picture on her mantel, Gerald in his old suit, her in that lace dress her sister sewed by hand. The next morning, she packed. Just 3 boxes. 1 for clothes. 1 for memories. 1 for books she hadn't read in years. There was no one to hug goodbye. No neighbors who truly knew her. No son waiting at the gate. Just silence. And the ranch. Mildred hadn't been back to the ranch in years. Not since Gerald fell ill and they moved closer to town for medical access. The house was still there, battered, but standing. The wood creaked like an old friend groaning awake. The barn sagged like an old man who had stopped hoping. Dust had made a home on every surface. But it was hers. All of it. Even the loneliness. For the next few days, she didn't do much. Just swept a little. Washed the curtains. Cooked eggs the way Gerald liked, out of habit. And sat on the porch as the wind whispered through the dried corn stalks. She didn't cry. But sometimes, she would forget for just a second that Gerald was gone, and glance toward the barn, expecting to see him fixing something, muttering about the fence. Only to be met with emptiness. On the 5th day, while cleaning the back shed, the one Gerald always kept locked, she found it. An old rusted key hanging behind a dusty mirror. She paused. This shed, it had been off limits for as long as she could remember. Gerald always said it was for storage, but he never let her near it. She opened it slowly. Inside, there was little but old crates, a broken table, and thick cobwebs. But in the far left corner, under an old tarp, she noticed a faint patch in the wooden floor, just slightly off in color. A hidden door? Her hands trembled as she reached down and lifted the planks. What she found was a narrow stone staircase, leading underground. And Mildred, quiet, forgotten Mildred, descended. It was dark, but the air was dry. The tunnel seemed natural, carved into the earth decades ago. At the end of it, the light from her lantern hit a wall. But not just any wall. It shimmered. It glittered like something she hadn't seen in years. It was copper. Thick veins of it. Everywhere. Mildred had been thrown out of her own family after losing her husband. Alone and grieving, she returned to the forgotten ranch no one wanted, only to find something hidden beneath the floorboards. An underground tunnel. And inside it, copper. But what she didn't know yet was that this was just the beginning. Mildred stood still, the old lantern flickering as its soft light bounced off the copper-veined walls. She ran her fingers along the stone. Rough. Cold. Beautiful. Copper ran like veins beneath the earth, alive, glimmering, valuable. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a myth. And it sure wasn't junk land like Carla claimed. She remembered the stories Gerald used to tell after dinner, when Nathan was little, tall tales about old mining maps and Granddad's whispers about the land being rich in minerals. She always thought he was just talking, the way men do when they miss their youth. But what if? What if it had all been real? That winter, before Gerald got sick, he had called her out to the porch. It was a blue-gray kind of day, where clouds sit heavy like secrets. He had said, "If anything ever happens to me, don't sell the ranch. Trust me, Millie. There's more to it than anyone knows." She thought he meant memories. She never realized he meant wealth. Buried not in gold, but in what the world had overlooked, just like they'd overlooked her. The next morning, Mildred returned to the shed and dug through every box, every drawer, every layer of dust. And then she found it, a small, leather-bound notebook tied with string. Inside were pages of hand-drawn maps, notes, and calculations. Gerald's handwriting. Tunnel depth, 30 feet. Copper purity, 87%. No permits, never told Nathan. Too greedy. This stays with Mildred. She'll know what to do. Tears welled in her eyes. Gerald had protected her. Even in death. He knew his son had changed. He knew Carla was circling like a hawk. He hadn't told anyone. He had trusted her, quiet, erased Mildred, to decide what came next. Something stirred inside her that day. Not anger. Not revenge. Just clarity. For years she had shrunk herself. Made herself smaller at dinner tables. Smiled while Carla talked over her. Ignored the way Nathan slowly stopped calling her mama and started saying ma like it was a chore. But now she had something they wanted, and they didn't even know it. Over the next week, Mildred made several trips to town. She spoke with a geologist under the pretense of needing a land survey. She asked questions at the bank, subtly, softly, about setting up a private trust. She met with a lawyer from 2 counties over. Not local. Discreet. She didn't tell a soul what she had. Not even the mailman. Not even her church friend, Clara. For the first time in her life, she had a secret. And it was bigger than anything she'd ever imagined. One afternoon, as fall melted into winter, she received a letter. Handwritten, but hurried. From Nathan. Ma, Carla and I were thinking, we feel bad about what happened. Maybe you could come spend the holidays with us. Maybe we could discuss the ranch, what to do with it long term. She stared at the page. They weren't sorry. They were curious. They had heard something. Copper Ridge was small. Word spreads. Someone must have seen her speaking to the surveyors. Maybe the guy from the diner overheard something. They weren't inviting her back out of guilt. They wanted back in. She sat down that evening and wrote just one sentence back. The ranch is not for sale. Neither am I. She folded it neatly, slipped it into an envelope, and smiled. For the first time in decades, she didn't feel erased. She felt seen, even if only by herself. 3 days later, a black SUV pulled up at the ranch. She saw the shimmer of designer sunglasses from the kitchen window. Carla. Alone. And she was holding a pie. Mildred didn't open the door. Not yet. Instead, she poured herself a cup of coffee, sat at the window, and watched her daughter-in-law knock and smile like none of it had ever happened. But this time, Mildred wasn't the same woman. This time, she held all the cards. Mildred was cast out after her husband's death, handed an old ranch like it was trash. But beneath that forgotten land, she found copper, and something deeper, self-worth. Now her greedy daughter-in-law Carla is back. Smiling at her front door. Holding pie. And hiding intentions sharper than knives. Mildred didn't rush to open the door. She sipped her coffee. Listened to the knock echo through the quiet house. Watched as Carla, dressed in her designer coat and fake kindness, knocked again and again until finally, Mildred opened the door just 2 inches. Carla. Mildred. Oh, it's so good to see you, she said, holding up the pie like a peace treaty. That store-bought? Carla laughed, too loud. Of course not. Mildred said nothing. Can I come in? Carla asked. Just wanted to talk, catch up. Maybe apologize? Inside, Carla's eyes scanned every corner of the house like a real estate agent. She complimented the curtains she once called dust rags. She commented on how peaceful the ranch was now. Then she eased into it. Nathan and I, well, we've been thinking. Maybe we were harsh. You were grieving. We were too. It was all just a big misunderstanding. Mildred nodded politely. Let her speak. Carla leaned forward, voice softer now. We just want what's best for the family. For Nathan. For the kids. Maybe we could all revisit the idea of selling this place? There it was. Mildred remembered the sound of Carla's voice the day of the will reading. Let her take it. Let her rot. That wasn't grief talking. That was greed. Entitlement. And now, Carla wanted her way back in, not because of love, but because she finally saw value in the woman she erased. Mildred rose from her chair. Walked to the kitchen. She returned with the pie. And slowly, dropped it straight into the trash can. I don't accept leftovers, she said, calm as ever. Carla's mouth opened. Then shut. Then tried again. Excuse me? You didn't come here to apologize. You came because someone told you what might be under this land. Carla went pale. That's ridiculous. Is it? Mildred said. Because you never showed up with pie before. The facade broke. You think you're smart, huh? Carla snapped. You think you're gonna play some big game with us? That land isn't even being mined. You don't have the money. Or the power. You're just you. You'll lose everything again, like always. Mildred looked at her, eyes steady. Then why are you so scared? After Carla stormed out, Mildred called her lawyer. The land trust was already in motion. She had partnered quietly with a small ethical mining company based 2 towns over, one that didn't leave wreckage, just royalties. The contract would give Mildred 15% of net profits. Enough to live comfortably. Enough to fund scholarships in Gerald's name. Enough to start a foundation for widows pushed aside by their own families. She didn't want millions. She wanted meaning. The next day, her phone rang. It was Nathan. She let it ring. And ring. And ring. No voicemail. No call back. He never used to wait. Now, he had something to lose. 3 days later, they both came. Carla, fake tears ready. Nathan, visibly uncomfortable. Ma, we were wrong, he said. I should have never let her speak to you like that. But you did, Mildred replied. And then you said nothing. She stood in her doorway, holding the knob like it was her spine. You think this is about copper? It's not. It's about how small I made myself for you. 4 years. I was your mother, and I watched you let someone turn me into a stranger. Nathan looked down. Now that I have something you want, I'm worth your time again? Carla stepped forward. We're still family. Mildred's face softened, but not with forgiveness. No. Family doesn't throw you out after a funeral. That evening, Mildred walked down the front path to the old metal ranch gate. With a small screwdriver, she removed the rusted Lancaster Ranch sign. She replaced it with a new plaque. One Gerald had secretly ordered years ago. She found it in a shed beside the maps. Millie's rise. They threw her away like she was nothing. Told her to keep the old ranch and disappear. But Mildred found more than copper buried in that soil. She found her worth, her voice, and the strength to rise from grief with quiet fire. Now, with the ranch reborn and her dignity intact, it's time for her story to finally begin. Millie's rise. The new sign gleamed under the winter sun. Brushed copper letters, not loud, not boastful. Just firm. Mildred stood beneath it in a soft wool coat, her late husband's favorite one. Her silver hair tucked under a scarf, her face calm, not bitter, not angry. Just ready. Inside the house, renovations had begun. New insulation, plumbing, fresh windows. A small office space was added near the kitchen, where she'd manage the contracts and monthly reports coming in from the copper partnership. No one thought she'd do it alone. But that was the point. They never thought she could. In early spring, the geologists confirmed what Gerald always believed, that copper veins were deep, clean, and rich. Mildred signed the contract herself. No son to co-sign. No man in a suit talking over her. Just her, a lawyer she hired, and a steady signature. The company wired her the first royalty check within 30 days. It wasn't millions, not yet, but it was more than enough. Enough to white heavy checkmark repair every broken fence and rebuild the barn. White heavy checkmark fund her community's widow support circle. White heavy checkmark launch a scholarship in Gerald's name at Copper Ridge High. White heavy checkmark and put aside a fund for young women over 60 to start home-based businesses. She didn't need revenge. She needed rebuilding. And now, she had it. Carla showed up again, uninvited. Nathan trailed behind, eyes filled with shame instead of fire this time. They brought the kids. Mildred hadn't seen them in over a year. She offered them lemonade. The kids ran in the fields while Carla lingered on the porch. "We're sorry," she said, not even trying to fake it this time. "We were scared of losing everything." "You didn't lose everything," Mildred replied. "You just lost me." Nathan stepped forward. "Ma, we don't want anything. We just wanted you to know we regret how we treated you." Mildred looked at him, searching his eyes for the boy he used to be. Then she said something soft. "I hope one day you treat your daughters the way you wish you treated me." She didn't invite them to stay. She waved to the grandkids as they got in the car. They waved back. She didn't ask Carla to hug her. She didn't demand apologies. She had closure. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need validation. She had peace. Months later, a letter arrived. A young woman named Aria wrote, "Dear Millie, I received the Lancaster grant. I never thought someone like me could ever start something of my own. You changed that. Thank you." Mildred placed the letter beside Gerald's photo. "We did it, Jerry," she whispered. "They erased me. But I rewrote the ending." She walks through her fields each morning now. No longer bent with sadness. No longer silent. She's not just a widow. She's Millie Lancaster. And this is her rise.